The glass nearly slipped from her hand. Not because she was clumsy, but because of what he just said. "Spend one night with me," the man murmured, not loud enough for the room, but heavy enough to crush the air between them. "I'll change your life." The restaurant didn't stop breathing. The soft piano didn't miss a note. But something shifted. She stared at him for half a second too long. Then she straightened. "Excuse me," she said calmly. His lips curved, confident, practiced. He had delivered this line before. Different cities. Different accents. Same outcome. She placed the glass down gently. "Do I look like a hooker to you?" The words sliced clean. A few heads turned. A waiter froze mid-step. Someone at a nearby table coughed. The billionaire blinked. She didn't wait for a response. "Enjoy your meal," she added, voice steady, then turned and walked away. And for the first time in 37 years, a man who could buy silence, loyalty, and affection with a flick of his wrist sat completely stunned. His name was Adrian Cole. Net worth, somewhere north of $8 billion, depending on the markets and how honest his accountants felt that year. To the world, Adrian Cole was a visionary. To magazines, he was elusive. To women, he was opportunity. Adrian had grown used to yes. Yes to deals. Yes to desires. Yes to people bending just enough to please him. Money had taught him a dangerous lesson early. If you had enough of it, you never had to ask properly. And tonight, like every other night, he hadn't. Until now. He replayed the moment in his head, slow and sharp. "Do I look like a hooker?" The question wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. That was the problem. It wasn't anger. It was disgust. No woman had ever walked away from him like that. Not without hesitation. Not without negotiation. She didn't even look back. Something unfamiliar crawled up his spine. Was it embarrassment? Her name was Maya. 26. Waitress by necessity, not identity. She moved through the narrow hallway behind the kitchen, heart pounding, palms damp, but her face stayed composed. Years of practice had taught her how to keep emotions folded neatly inside. One of the chefs glanced up. "You okay?" "I'm fine," she replied, reaching for a tray. She wasn't shaking because he was rich. She was shaking because she was tired. Tired of men confusing politeness for permission. Tired of being appraised like an item on a menu. Tired of silence being mistaken for consent. She adjusted her apron and stepped back into the dining room. Adrian finished his drink in one swallow. Around him, the restaurant staff moved carefully. Everyone knew who he was. They always did. Managers hovered. Waiters smiled too much. At home it was the same. His penthouse ran like a quiet machine. Housekeepers glided. Assistants anticipated. No one ever met his eyes for too long. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. A raised eyebrow was enough. Respect, he believed, was efficiency. The next morning, sunlight cut through floor-to-ceiling windows as Adrian stood adjusting his cufflinks. "Coffee," he said without turning. Nothing happened. His jaw tightened. "Coffee," he repeated, sharper. A soft voice answered. "One moment, sir." The maid, Elena, hurried in, hands trembling slightly as she set the cup down. A drop splashed onto the saucer. Adrian sighed. "Careful." "I'm sorry, sir." He waved her away without looking. To him, it was nothing. To Elena, it was another reminder to shrink. Later that day, in his car, Adrian's mind drifted back not to his meetings, not to his portfolio, but to a waitress's eyes. They hadn't been impressed. They hadn't been fearful. They had been disappointed. The thought irritated him. Unacceptable. He wasn't used to unresolved moments. 2 days later, he returned to the restaurant. Not because he was hungry. Because unfinished things bothered him. Maya noticed him immediately. The same tailored suit. The same quiet authority. She felt it in her chest but ignored it. This time, when she approached the table, he didn't speak. He waited. "That'll be all?" she asked professionally. He studied her face, searching for something. Recognition. Regret. Curiosity. There was none. "I owe you an apology," he said finally. She paused. "I spoke out of line," he continued. The words tasted strange. I assumed. Yes, she interrupted gently. You did. He blinked again. She met his gaze, unflinching. If you're here to apologize, she said, do it properly. The room felt smaller. How? He asked. The question slipped out before pride could stop it. Maya considered him for a long moment. Then she said something that no one had ever said to Adrian Cole. If you want a chance to speak to me again, she said, you'll need to learn how to treat people like they matter. The beat. Everyone, she added. Adrian leaned back in his chair, conflicted. No deal. No numbers. No shortcuts. Just a condition. And for the first time, the richest man in the room realized he might be the poorest where it counted. Adrian didn't laugh. He didn't smile either. He studied Maya the way he studied markets, looking for leverage, loopholes, a way to reframe the situation in his favor. You're asking me to pretend, he said slowly. I'm asking you to change, she replied. There was no edge in her voice. No challenge. Just certainty. I don't need to pretend, he said. I'm respectful. Maya tilted her head slightly. You think you are. That landed harder than an insult. She reached into her apron and pulled out a small notepad, tore a page, and slid it across the table. 3 rules, she said. Start there. He glanced down. You will speak to everyone without commands. You will apologize when you're wrong, even if it costs your pride. You will do one thing each day that benefits someone who can give you nothing in return. He scoffed. That's it. She met his eyes. That's everything. Silence stretched. And if I do this? He asked. Then we talk, she said. Not as a billionaire. As a man. She turned to leave. He spoke before she could take 2 steps. How will you know? She smiled just slightly. You won't need to tell me, she said. People will. In the elevator up to his penthouse, Adrian stared at his reflection. The rules replayed in his head like an insult masquerading as wisdom. Speak without commands? Apologize? Do things without return? This was charity theater. Performance. Yet the thought of failing bothered him more than the thought of trying. Fine, he decided. He would prove her wrong. The next morning, Adrian stepped into his office. A junior assistant bumped into him, papers spilling across the floor. I'm so sorry, sir, the assistant rushed, kneeling. Adrian inhaled sharply. Normally he would have walked past. Instead, rule number 1 echoed. You will speak without commands. Be more careful, he said. The assistant froze. Adrian realized too late. The tone. The weight. The boy's shoulders slumped as he gathered the papers. Adrian felt it immediately. Failure. That afternoon, in the boardroom, a presentation malfunctioned. The screen flickered, then went black. Adrian turned to his tech lead. What did you do? He snapped. The room stiffened. The tech lead swallowed. It wasn't. Adrian stopped. Something in the silence felt wrong. Maya's voice surfaced in his mind. You think you're respectful. He exhaled. I'm sorry, he said abruptly. The words echoed like glass shattering. 20 heads turned. The tech lead stared. Sir? I spoke harshly, Adrian continued, forcing himself through it. Please fix it when you can. The room didn't relax. It watched. Word traveled faster than numbers ever could. That evening, Elena cleaned the living room quietly. Elena, Adrian said. She flinched. He noticed. Another mark against him. Yes, sir? Sit, he said, then caught himself. Please. Sit. She hesitated, then perched on the edge of the couch. I owe you an apology, he said. Her eyes widened. For how I've spoken to you, he continued. For making you feel invisible. Tears welled before she could stop them. I didn't know, she whispered. I know, he replied. And for the first time, he truly did. That night, Adrian couldn't sleep. Not because of stress. Because of faces. The assistant. The tech lead. Elena. How many apologies had he owed and never paid? The question gnawed at him. On the 3rd day, Adrian left his driver behind and walked. No entourage. No announcements. At a small corner store, an elderly man struggled with bags. Adrian reached for them. The man stared suspiciously. "You don't have to," the man said. "I know," Adrian replied. "I want to." The bags were heavier than expected. It felt good. Not powerful. Human. Maya heard about it before she saw it. A customer mentioned it casually. "That rich guy," the woman said, "helped my dad carry groceries." Maya paused mid-wipe. She didn't smile. Not yet. The next week, pressure mounted. A deal went sideways. Millions were at stake. In a heated call, Adrian snapped. Old instincts surged. After he slammed the phone down, the room felt hollow. Rule number 2. Apologize when you're wrong. He stared at the phone for a long time. Then he picked it up. When Adrian returned to the restaurant, Maya didn't rush to his table. She let him wait. Finally, she approached. "Sit," he said automatically. She raised an eyebrow. He closed his eyes briefly. "Please." She sat. "I failed," he said. That surprised her. "I snapped," he continued. "I hurt people. I apologized, but it felt late." Maya studied him. "Growth isn't clean," she said. "It's honest." He nodded. "Why are you doing this?" he asked quietly. She thought for a moment. "Because someone once taught me," she said. "And it saved me." Adrian realized then this wasn't about her approval. It was about becoming someone who didn't need permission to be decent. And for the first time, change didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like relief. Adrian's world didn't change overnight. It softened. Meetings slowed. Voices lowered. People lingered longer in rooms he entered. Not out of fear. Out of surprise. When he asked his assistant how her weekend was and waited for the answer, she nearly cried. He noticed things now. Small pauses. Downcast eyes. People bracing before he spoke. And each time, something inside him twisted. How long have I been like this? The memory came one evening without invitation. A narrow apartment. A woman's back turned. A door closing softly, not to wake the neighbors. He was 9 years old, holding a backpack too big for him. His mother never said goodbye. She left money on the table. Money, he learned early, was a substitute for presence. That night, sitting alone in his penthouse, Adrian finally admitted it. "I learned control because I never had care." They talked longer now. Not about money. Not about rules. About life. Maya told him about her younger brother. About how she raised him after their father died. About learning to swallow pride just to keep the lights on. "But I never swallowed my boundaries," she said. "Those are expensive." Adrian smiled faintly. "I used to think boundaries were obstacles," he admitted. "And now I think they're invitations." One afternoon, Adrian passed a small building with peeling paint and children's laughter spilling into the street. He stopped. "What's this?" he asked a volunteer nearby. "Temporary shelter," the woman replied. "Mostly kids without parents. We're underfunded." He watched a little girl tie her brother's shoe. Something clenched in his chest. He donated quietly. Then he came back. Then again. This feels different, he thought. No headlines. No applause. Just presence. Elena noticed the change before anyone else. "Good morning, Elena," he said one day. Not out of obligation. Out of recognition. She stood taller now. Smiled more. Respect, he realized, multiplies. "You're doing good things," Maya said one evening. He waited. "But why?" He didn't answer immediately. "Because I was empty," he said finally. "And power didn't fill it." She nodded. "That's the right answer." A board member called him reckless. "You're distracted," the man said. "This charity phase is costing focus." Adrian leaned back. "No," he said calmly. "It's costing ego." He ended the call. For the first time, he chose meaning over dominance. At the shelter, a boy asked him, "Are you our dad now?" Adrian knelt. "No," he said gently. "But I can stay." The boy smiled. It was enough. She visited the shelter unannounced. Watched him listen to children. Tie shoes awkwardly. Laugh without restraint. This wasn't performance. This was repair. "I don't want to impress you anymore," Adrian told her later. "I just want to be right? Maya looked at him for a long time. You are, she said softly. The man who once demanded everything now asked permission from life itself. And life, slowly, began to answer. Adrian never offered Maya money again. Only time. Only consistency. Only the man he had become. One evening, as the city lights softened outside the restaurant, she finally smiled and said, "Now, we can talk." He nodded, grateful. Because the greatest thing he ever gained wasn't love, or redemption, or even purpose. It was understanding. That respect can't be bought. It can only be earned. And sometimes, the richest transformation begins the moment someone finally says, "No."